Hello. Welcome to This Week in Politics, Part 2. We had a technical difficulty when we started the program, so we had to start over. So if you are getting two of these, it's my apologies. The first one, I don't believe, had any sound on it, so we needed to start over. Now, there's four stories I want us to take a look at today. And the first one I want to talk about is Congressman is arrested. And this story irritated me to death because when you hear what this congressman supposedly did, and then compare that to what we know and can prove that Hillary did, and Hillary is still walking around, and this guy is been arrested. You know what the difference is? The guy that was arrested, the congressman, is a Republican and a friend of Trump. That's the difference. Now, there are some glaring things in this story. Number one, it happened 3 months before our national election. So this guy's not going to get a fair trial. There's not going to be any resolution before the election. And the Democrats did this on purpose to try to ruin this guy and to give the Republicans and the Trump administration a black eye going into the elections. If it were possible for this to be resolved before, then they should have done it before. The federal government, the Justice Department, is interdicting themselves into this election already, and we still got 3 months to go. I think this is so blatantly obvious what they're doing. It is unforgivable. This guy was a big supporter of Trump. He was one of the first supporters of Trump. He says he's innocent. Again, we won't know until the trial is done, and the trial won't be done before the election. If this guy loses this election in New York, we can put the blame squarely on the Democrats in the Justice Department. I've done a couple of stories over the last year or so, and I've been telling about the new way that the Democrats are trying to win elections. They cannot win on ideas because the American public has thoroughly thrown the bums out. There's no ideas that the Democrats have that the American people want any part of. That's obvious by the elections. So for the last year and a half, what the Democrats have been doing is steal, kill, and destroy anybody that has anything to do with Trump, the Trump administration, supporters of Trump, or any of the states that Trump carried. Now, who else do we know that is steal, kill, and destroy? Yeah, that's right. And that's the Democratic Party. How are they doing it? Well, I mean, we got a big trial going on right now with Paul Manafort. It had nothing. He was Donald Trump's campaign manager for about 5 minutes. And they're trying to get something on Trump. So they indicted this guy, sent him to court. He could get hundreds of years of jail time for something he did 10 years before he knew Trump. And they're going to put him in jail, and they're going to make him spend all of this money to defend himself, and they've ruined his job, his reputation, his family, and the Democrats don't care. Steal, kill, and destroy at any cost anyone associated with Trump. That's the new plan, and that's what they've done to this congressman. Now, I want to read this article to you, and I'm going to point some things out as we go. Now, I don't know if you can you see that? Now, this article was out of the Wall Street Journal. See the big picture they've got of him there and all the press surrounding him? When was the last time you saw a picture like that of Hillary? Never. Okay. Representative Christopher Collins, a Republican congressman from New York, was arrested Wednesday and charged with participating in an insider trading scheme to sell the shares in an Australian biotech company before the public disclosure of a failed drug trial. That's the charge, not the conviction, not the trial, nothing. That's the charge. Federal prosecutors in Manhattan, what do we know about Manhattan? Liberal, left-wing, Democrat. Okay? Accused Representative Collins, 68 years old, of tipping off his son last summer about the results of a multiple sclerosis drug trial completed by Innate Immunotherapies Limited, a biotech company based in Sydney. Representative Collins was a member of the Innate's board of directors at one of the company's largest shareholders, holding approximately 16.8% of the stock. Representative Collins, who serves the 27th District in western New York near Buffalo and Rochester, was the first member of Congress to endorse Donald Trump, and there's the reason they went after him. During the 2016 presidential campaign, once considered a backbencher in the House, Representative Collins' stature grew after Mr. Trump won the GOP nomination. Now, according to the indictment, he passed confidential results to his son, Cameron, so he could trade on the tip. So he sold 1.4 million N8 shares and gave the information to at least 4 individuals, including his fiancee and her father. Mr. Zansky then sold all of his N8 shares and shared the tip with at least 3 other individuals, including his brother and sister, before the public release of the trial. Tom Price, the former Secretary of Health and Human Services, was also an investor in N8 and has previously said he bought shares in the company after hearing about it from Collins. Dr. Price sold his N8 shares upon taking the cabinet post and wasn't a shareholder in June. Several other Republicans in Congress held stock in the company, according to financial disclosures. I wonder if any Democrats held stock. You don't hear one word about any Democrats. Don't you think that out of all the shareholders in any company, you would find Republicans and Democrats? Doesn't say one thing about any Democrat in this article. N8 publicly announced the failed drug trial after the markets had closed on June 26, 2017. The next day, N8's stock dropped more than 90%. In total, the trades allowed the defendants and alleged co-conspirators to avoid more than $768,000 in losses, the indictment said. Representative Collins' lawyers, Jonathan Barr and Jonathan New of Baker Hostetler, said in a statement, "We are confident he will be completely vindicated and exonerated." Cameron Collins and Mr. Zarsky were also charged Wednesday. Their lawyers did not respond to a request. All 3 men pleaded not guilty in their arraignment in Manhattan federal court, and each was released on $500,000 bond. The arrest of Representative Collins will likely tighten his re-election campaign. Steal, kill, and destroy. Absolutely shameless. The Democrats are systematically going after these people. Now, you say if the administration went after him, isn't it the Trump administration? No. No, we still have the majority of the government is still the Obama holdovers. And especially in New York, those are all liberal Democrats down there. All those prosecutors, all liberal Democrats. They went after a Republican. And if this Collins loses his reelection bid, we can lay it straight at the footsteps of the federal justice system. And that is wrong. That is never supposed to happen that way. At the very least, they should have done was to hold off until after the election to arrest this guy. Doing it the year of election is suspect. Doing it 6 months before is dirty pool. Doing it 2.5 or 3 months before the election, that is political political homicide. They're going out trying to kill this guy's career. And now he's going to have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to defend himself. And there will be no resolution before the election. In the best possible world, it's going to be a year. And in New York, it'll be longer than that. This guy, when the election comes around, this guy is going to um, not have resolution. There will be no closure on this case, and that is dirty pool. That is, uh, and it would be different if it was done by his political adversary there in his district, but it wasn't. This was solely done by the Justice Department in Washington, working with their liberal Democrat friends in New York and Manhattan to go get this guy. This is wrong. This is just wrong. And this is the stuff that the Democrats are doing to win. You don't see the Republicans playing any of that stupid game. You don't see the Republicans doing that. All right. The next story I want to talk about is called Space Force. Now, Donald Trump has said that he wants to add another arm to the U.S. military, in addition to the Air Force, Marines, Army, Coast Guard, and Navy. He wants to add Space Force. Now, they're making fun of him. The detractors are saying it'll cost too much money. But I believe this is a good thing for our country, and I'm going to get into the details of why. But it will be another part to the military. I don't know why it wasn't done before. And to be honest with you, Ronald Reagan tried to do a part of this when he was in office. He didn't go this far, but remember, he came up with Star Wars, and we're going to get into that in a minute. In fact, let's do that right now. The concept between, now remember, this was in 1980 something, and by using this idea, he toppled Russia, the USSR. And here was the concept: if we could have satellites that would surround the United States or surround the entire globe in space and be able to shoot down any missile from any country anywhere in the world on a moment's notice, that would eliminate nuclear weapons. It would eliminate the use of missiles. And there was not the technology to do that, but that was the concept. And at the time, we were in an arms race with Russia. At least we thought so. And they begged Reagan not to do this, and he pushed, and finally, when Russia decided they couldn't do that anymore, they ended up folding. Why do I mention that? Well, first off, I still think that concept that's perfect. And somebody at some point is going to control part, if not all, of outer space around the globe. And we need to be that country. We cannot allow Russia to do that. We cannot allow China to do that. And I am pretty sure that China is already starting this. They've probably got a head start on us. Just because we haven't heard about it or read about it anywhere does not mean they're not doing it. I think they'd be silly not to be doing it. Because the country that does that automatically neutralizes every other country in the world and all of their military. All they'll have is ground forces and the tools to fight like they did in World War II. You know, guns, bombs, planes, but it'll eliminate missiles. It will eliminate nuclear warheads. It will eliminate all of that. And here's the great part about it. Whatever with the Star Wars. Whatever country decided they were going to shoot off nuclear weapons, if we shot it down instantaneously, all of that nuclear fallout would go on them. Okay, so we talked about Star Wars. I want to talk now about our electrical grid in this country. Did you know that if any country detonated a nuclear weapon in space above our country, that we would be relegated to the 18th century in a minute? And you say, well, how is that possible? Because the charge from that, the nuclear would do anything, but the explosion and the charge would destroy the electrical grid in this country. Now, it's very easy to fix if we do it before that happens, but the electrical companies don't want to go to the expense. The federal government doesn't want to go to the expense, and everybody thinks we're safe. We are not safe. As an example, if North Korea could manage to get a nuclear weapon and explode it over our country, now think about this. If our electricity goes out, what happens? And it would take years to rebuild, by the way. It's not like you could just go in there in a week or a month or a year and turn the electricity on for everybody in the country. Okay? But think about that. No electricity means no computers. No computers means we are defenseless. Unable to shoot our missiles or our nuclear weapons. Unable to communicate because we use cell phones by satellite, which goes in space. So, no communication, no satellites, no cameras, no TV, no radio, no refrigeration, which means no food, which means if you don't have ground to grow your own, we will starve. And for every business out there, let's just follow this down the chain. Let's just say that you like chicken. Think of the chicken growers. They have no electricity. How will they feed the chickens? How will they harvest the chickens? How will they process the chickens? How will they transport the chickens? You see the problem? And all that would take is one explosion over our country, and we would be in the dark ages. Somebody is going to control space. It should be us. If we allow China to do that, we will be speaking Chinese in the day after that happens. They will just walk on shore, and we won't be able to fight them. Well, first off, they'd get here, and we wouldn't even know that they were here until it was too late. We need to control outer space, and I think Space Force is the exact way to do it. And I've given 2 examples of reasons we need to have that. And there are countless other reasons why we need to have the Space Force. I think that in the next 6 years, Donald Trump needs to make sure it gets funded, that they start getting the people hired into the military, recruited into the military, come up with the uniform and a goal and the money and the research abilities and the hardware and software to make this all happen. And think about this. Remember when, well, you may not remember, but when we started the space race with the Russians in 1962, I believe, or 3, all of the innovations that came out of that. I mean, we got to the moon in 7 years, and we had no idea how we were going to do that. We hadn't even shot a missile. We hadn't even put man in space. But we came up with all the technology to make that happen in 7 years. Think about what we could do with this. If we put enough people and resources at this, we could innovate endlessly. The possibilities are endless. This is a great, great opportunity. People need to stop making fun of the name Space Force and start concentrating on the benefits. Now, the next story I want to talk about, I call the Taos compound. Now, for those of you that don't know, here's the story. They found a compound in New York. They call it the Taos compound. I believe that's the name of the city where it was near. Was out in the middle of nowhere, and it was just a hole in the ground with some tires around it. And anyway, this guy had 11 children out there that were starving to death. He said he was training them to be school shooters. I don't think that's true. I believe because these were little kids. I believe it was a pedophile ring, is what I believe. But let's go with the story. The story says he was training them to be school shooters. Now, when I first read about this story, I thought, well, that's really cruel, and the mainstream media didn't report on it hardly at all. And when they did, they left a lot of the facts out that became obvious a few days later. As an example, the guy that was arrested for doing it is the son of an imam in New York City who was an unindicted co-conspirator for the World Trade Center. This guy's a terrorist. He's Middle Eastern. He is a jihadist terrorist. The press left that out. They didn't bother to say that. This guy's own 3-year-old child is missing and presumed dead. They found remains on the grounds there, and they believe it was his kid who was physically handicapped. And here's the sick part about it. The FBI had been watching it and knew about it and knew who was there and what was there, but they didn't want to go in and arrest him. I've not got a good solid answer why, but I have a good idea. Because he was Middle Eastern, and they didn't want to draw attention to that. So you know who did the arrest? It was the local police. They went in there and arrested the guy, got the kids out of there, and went through and did the work that the FBI should have done and have done for a long time, but did nothing. I did read one article where it said that the local police were so fed up with the FBI not doing anything for so long, they just decided to go in and do it themselves. Good for them. So on the Taos compound, we got 11 starving kids. They were starving. I think I left that out. They were starving to death, these kids. And one was dead. And the guy they arrested was a Muslim, radical jihadist. He was the son of an imam in New York, Brooklyn, of course. Now, here's some questions I have. Where did the kids come from? I mean, were they his kids? Were they illegal aliens? I mean, it was in New Mexico, could have been illegal alien kids. And where did these, I mean, and if they were illegal aliens, where's the parents? How did they get these kids, and how did they get them into here, and why is nobody looking for them? I mean, you got 11 kids starving and burning up out in the middle of the desert, and one's already dead, and nobody's asking questions? As I said, I believe the facts scream out to me that training them to be shooters was a lie. I believe because they were children, because they were young. I believe it was a sex trafficking ring, and I believe this guy was in charge of it. I believe he was selling these kids or selling their services and taking that money and shooting it back to his dad, the imam in New York City. That's what it looks like to me. Or was it human trafficking? If it's not a sex ring or pedophile ring, how about human trafficking? You grab the kids coming across the border that, we have to release. They could be coming across with bad guys anyway, and then as soon as they get across, they head to this place and they put them in the thing. So you figure 11 kids coming across with 11 so-called parents. If we catch 5 of them, but 11 get through, they got 11 kids. What do they do with the kids? They sell them. If not for sex slaves, maybe for just slaves or servants. Or maybe they're using them for human sacrifice or for sex slaves. There's a lot going on in this story that nobody has covered. And we can't even get the mainstream media to say that this guy was a Muslim radical jihadist terrorist. Can't even get them to say the words, much less go in there and investigate the story. Let's find out the facts. The conservative media have at least been reporting the facts as we know them. The mainstream media, to my knowledge, still has not acknowledged that. But we know who it is, and he's online, and we know who his father is. I mean, these are just easily known facts, but the mainstream media still refuses to acknowledge it. It just amazes me. All right. So the last story I want to talk about is called InfoWars. Now, for those of you that don't know, InfoWars is a show on cable or on online. The guy that leads it, his name is Alex Jones. And I've watched him some. He's a conspiracy theorist. He's kind of a nutball. He's got an irritating voice, but the last I checked, he had 2.5 million followers on his website. Now, he's a right winger, by the way. I guess I forgot to say that. A right wing conspiracy theorist, conservative, Republican. So I say all of this because this week what happened is all in the same day, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube shut his channels down. That was a coordinated attack against a major conservative player to limit his speech and limit his, again, steal, kill, and destroy. They're trying to destroy Alex Jones because of his followers. Now, whether you like InfoWars and Alex Jones or not is not the point. The point is they are shutting him down. They are limiting his free speech. And these social websites are doing it on purpose. They are purposely going after him. You don't see them cutting ties with Netflix because Obama's on there. They're calling what he does hate speech. It's not hate speech. It's anti-media. It's anti-democrat. It's anti-liberal. It's all of those things. And that's why they're shutting it down. We cannot allow this to stand. We can't allow this to happen. If InfoWars takes these companies to court, he will win. There's no question at all. But I believe they are using this as a test case. If they could shut him down and intimidate him not to go to court, but to find other ways, or if he promises to limit his free speech rights himself, they'll put him back on. None of us should have to do that. I have been doing programs now for 2 years, yelling and screaming about limiting our free speech on these social websites. Well, here it is, and I've told you all along that the goal of this on the social websites was to influence the elections with an eye towards 2020. But here we do again 2.5 months before the midterm elections, and they've shut down a major conservative voice. Now, he may or may not be a nutball, but what did we do before we had social websites when there was fake news out there? And there was still fake news out there. What did we do? We listened to it. We made our own judgments. It's either fake news or it's not. We made our own decision. We don't need anybody telling us to do that. And we truly don't need anybody taking any type of action towards our accounts or our free speech in any way, shape, or form. If they had gone in and if we had a conservative social website and we went in and did this to Al Sharpton's account or um, Barack Obama's website or Jesse Jackson's website, can you imagine what would happen? The uproar would be deafening. It would be front page news. They'd be going to court. They would be suing. They would be doing all kinds of nasty, nasty things. But they didn't go after a Democrat liberal. They went after a conservative Republican. And I have been telling you all along, that's the goal, is to shut our voice down. They're succeeding. Now, there's another thing called shadow something. And that's what they've done to my website. When I put out, I used to put out 5 different programs a week. Now I do 3, mainly because I don't have the time. But when I would put those shows out there 2 years ago, I was reaching 3 to 5,000 people a week. Okay. Last year, I was reaching 1,200 to 1,500 with the same amount of people. This year, I reach 750 to 1,200 people, 1,250. Now, when I say I reach them, I boost those shows and I pay to have that gone out there, and they keep all of the info for me. So this is information that's coming from them to me. From them, I mean from Facebook to me. I spend the same amount of money advertising and I'm reaching less than half. Right now, today, I'm reaching 25% of what I reached just 2 years ago with the same amount of likes. So what that means is out of the 3,000 people that are on my, that should be seeing my stuff, only 750 to 1,200 of them are seeing any of the material. And it's not always the same ones. Of that 25%, probably 10% of them are the same ones over and over. But they use the rest of the percentage to mix it up. So the people that don't follow me closely are only seeing maybe 1 or 2 shows a month that I put out. It's a very, very small percentage that sees everything I put out. And that is based on the algorithms that Facebook is controlling. The name of the main program I put out there is called The Right Wing Reverend, and it's right in my name. So, of course, anything right wing, the algorithms are automatically against me. And that's what happened to him. He's got 2.5 million followers, though. And they're using this guy as a test case. I promise you. They want to see which way he's going to jump. If he does not sue, we will soon find another one coming down the road. And that'll happen. And it'll happen before the election. They want to see how much of an impact they can have. By they, I mean Facebook, Google, and Twitter. They want to see how big of an impact they can have on the midterm elections so they can extrapolate that impact down to the 2020 election. The goal was, is, and remains to not allow the right wing or the conservatives to have a voice in the 2020 election on social media. We still have the radio. We still have conservatives on the radio. Rush Limbaugh, Laura Ingraham. We still have those Phil something and Levin. We still have them, okay? It's going to be hard to mess with them. But they've gone after Laura Ingraham, and they just about hurt her. They tried going after Limbaugh. That didn't work. As far as I know, they have not gone after Levin. But their goal is to steal, kill, and destroy anybody associated with Trump, conservatives, Republicans, Christians. And I happen to be all of those things. And Alex Jones is going to be the first case. The first big case that is obvious. I mean, you just can't, they didn't just limit him, they shut his channel down. Now, we have to take action. We cannot allow this to stand because who's next? And at some point, they'll be coming after you. And I said this just in the last program when I was talking about Facebook. I said, if you are a liberal Democrat, what do you consider hate speech? Anything that's conservative, Christian, or Republican, that's hate speech to you. If I start talking about killing babies in the womb, that's hate speech to them. To me, that's God speech. Okay? They want to call it pro-choice. I want to call it pro-murder. They call it a woman's choice. It's not a woman's choice. They're allowing the woman to decide to kill her baby. To a liberal Democrat, that is hate speech. So when these three companies say we want to eliminate hate speech, everybody says, yeah, no hate speech. No, don't be haters, be appreciators, you know? No. We have allowed hate speech forever. We allow pornography. That's hate speech to me. Let the American people decide for themselves what is hate speech. If you don't like InfoWars or you don't like the right-wing reverend, don't tune in. That's as simple as it gets. We do not need somebody coming in and saying, when you talk about abortion, that's hate speech, and so we're going to shut you down. That way you can have no impact at all. That's wrong. That is absolutely anti-constitutional. Now, I want to go over this article. And the name of it is Tech Firms Split on How to Handle InfoWars. Twitter, Chief Executive Jack Dorsey tweeted late Tuesday that his platform wouldn't join other social networks in banning parts or all of the far-right provocateurs' content. His reason? Mr. Jones hadn't violated Twitter policy, which bans bullying or threatening behavior, but not posts that are simply offensive to many. Twitter shouldn't succumb and simply react to outside pressure, Mr. Dorsey wrote, adding that the company doesn't take a political viewpoint. That's not us. But they did. Mr. Jones is a longtime conspiracy theorist whose website, Infowars.com, has pushed unfounded claims such as calling Sandy Hook Elementary School massacre a hoax and accusing Democrats of running global child sex ring. What he says may or may not be true. You may or may not like it. It may or may not be wrong. It doesn't matter. The facts of what he talks about doesn't matter. What matters is what is happening to his program because of somebody else's actions, i.e., Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Mr. Dorsey's succession of tweets cast in sharp relief the tech industry at times incongruous effort to police conspiracy theorists and hate speech. Why should we police conspiracy theories and hate speech? Why is that? Because they don't like it? No, it has nothing to do with hate speech. It has to do with shutting down conservatives. Whenever they say conspiracy theorists or hate speech, substitute the words um, conservatives or Christians. That's what they really mean. While the biggest tech companies have historically avoided being arbiters of what is acceptable and what is not, recent moves against Mr. Jones mark a potential shift towards more active self-monitoring by social media. Okay. Again, they are adding legitimacy to what these companies are doing. A potential shift towards more active self-monitoring. They're not self-monitoring. They are content monitoring. Let's be clear. Self-monitoring, if you're Facebook, self-monitoring is you modify your internal company. If you have if your internal company has a problem with uh, sexual bias, then you take efforts on your internal company, not on the companies that are on your website. So they technically here are misleading the people. Apple took the lead in erasing much InfoWars content from its podcast app and iTunes Store on Sunday. Facebook, Inc., Alphabet Inc., which is YouTube, and Spotify followed suit on Monday. Microsoft Corp's LinkedIn and Pinterest Inc. also removed InfoWars content. So in one day, get this, in one day, Apple, um, iTunes, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, LinkedIn, and Pinterest all removed InfoWars. That is not a coincidence. That is a coordinated effort to go after this man. That is a clear violation of a coordinated effort to shut down a particular individual for what they're calling conspiracy theories and hate speech. There is no exception where you get to violate our constitutional right of free speech. There is no circumstance at all. However, many of those firms also tried to calibrate their moves and stopped short of banning Mr. Jones altogether. Apple, for example, eliminated access to 5 InfoWars podcasts but allowed his apps to remain. So the ones that they don't agree with, they shut him out. They are, the paper says they are trying to calibrate their moves. That's a fancy way of saying they're getting rid of the things they don't want. Facebook changed course Monday after weeks of defending InfoWars' presence on its site, even amid mounting criticism. The company had previously said Mr. Jones' content didn't violate Facebook standards, while at the same time saying it could be given less attention in news feeds. So Facebook said right here that InfoWars had not violated any Facebook. In taking further action on Monday, Facebook cited repeated violations of its policy against hate speech and content glorifying violence. Really? I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've been on Facebook and I've seen pornography. I've seen homosexual sexual acts on Facebook. I have seen naked bodies on there, and none of that seems to violate their content, but what they want to call hate speech and conspiracy. So hate speech and conspiracy theory is a violation, but sexual acts, nudity, homosexual acts, that's okay. So Facebook at first said he didn't violate any of their things. On Monday, Facebook cited repeated violations of its policy. Wow. Again, they are using uh, catchphrases, hate speech. Everybody has their own concept of what hate speech is. As I said, if you're a liberal Democrat, talking about murdering babies in the womb is hate speech. To me, that's God speech. If you are a conservative, talking about pro-choice, and that to me is hate speech. Mr. Jones cast the actions against him as part of a perceived culture war between the far right, where Mr. Jones draws much of his audience, and Silicon Valley, which is far left. The article doesn't say that, but Silicon Valley is extreme left. This issue is not about InfoWars engaging in hate speech or violating community standards. It's about whose speech and ideas are favored and whose are opposed, Mr. Jones tweeted Tuesday evening. He's absolutely right. Since the bans earlier this week, InfoWars app downloads have climbed. As of Wednesday morning, it was the #3 news app on Apple's App Store and one of the top trending apps in Google Play Store, ranking above apps for all traditional media outlets. That will slow down and cease. Right now, that's good news for him and bad news for the social media, but that will peter out over time. And they will get their effect if he does not fight. How best to police content on social media has become key issues for tech companies amid growing political and media pressure, particularly after Russian effort. Okay. First off, I do not want anybody policing my content. Okay. So, right out of the first phrase in the sentence is wrong. How to best police content on social media? It shouldn't be done. Has become a key issue for tech companies, which means that's how they're going to gain power, is to control content. Amid growing political and media pressure, there has been no political pressure. That is, and I've covered this in many stories before, that has been a tool, and I knew they were going to do this, and I said this 2 years ago. It was a phony, trumped up effort instigated by, I believe, Google, Twitter, and Facebook to give it the appearance of the government putting pressure on them to police content to give them the okay to do this. And I was right. This action on InfoWars proves that everything I have been saying all along has been right. And I wish somebody would listen and go do something. I'm just a little guy out here. I got no power, I got no money, I got no pull, I got no nothing. But I was right about this, and I'm telling you, I'm still right with what the goal is going to be, particularly after Russian efforts to influence the 2016 U.S. presidential elections used online platforms to spread information. Okay. I have no doubt they did, but so did the Chinese, and so did the North Koreans, and so did the English, and so did the Australians, and so did everybody else in the world that has any amount of technology people in their country. Not just the Russians. Everybody, the United States does this to every other country in the world. It's just what is done. They're using this again as a straw man. Efforts to rein in misinformation have at times sparked accusations of political bias. Okay. I remember when we had 3 channels on TV and they interviewed one of the newscasters. What was his name? I can't remember. He was a big, huge name. Everybody loved him. And they asked him, what, in your opinion, is the news? And he looked straight at him and said, the news is whatever I say it is. I remember sitting and watching the news, and I had this idea where there should be a little light over the talking head's voice or over his face or over his head. And it should say one of two things: fact or opinion. I want you to think about that. The next time you watch the news, you go through there and you notice how many facts they actually give you. The rest of it's opinion or how they spin it. Like that article we just talked about. You know, and I pointed out the spin parts as we went through it. But this is a great example of spinning it. Okay, to police. Well, let's do this one. How best to police content on social media has become a key issue. They're stating it like it's a fact. Policing content of any type is against our Constitution. We do not police pornography. We do not police liberals. We do not police magazines. We do not police newspapers. Why are we policing content on social media? The answer is obvious, because the left controls the newspapers. The left controls the magazines. The left controls the movies. The left controls TV content. The left controls the news medias. The right controls the content on social media that is controlled by the left. That's why they're going after social media. If they shut down social media, the right will have no place to go except for 3 or 4 radio shows on regular radio. That listenership continues to go down, just like readership does on newspapers, because everybody's going to social websites. And when they cut us out of there, our voice will be shut down, and that's the goal. Go out and do something. Don't allow this to stand. Make your voice be heard. I've been doing stories on this and telling what the goal is for 2 years now. Jump on the bandwagon, go out there and do that. Please, we've got to get the word out. We have to stop this, and we have to let the American people know how much is at stake, and how big the battle is here. Well, that's about all the stories I wanted to cover this week. I do want to say that all of the programs that we do and the blogs and all of it is all produced by Prayer Box Ministry. If you'd like to know a little bit more about who we are and what we do, you can go to our website, prayerboxministry.org. All of our content is over there. That website was designed to be an interactive website, and we recently at least doubled the amount of content that is on that page. And it'll always be a work in practice, so don't be surprised if it's only, not every program is there, but we're working on it. We'll work on it for probably as long as we do them. But go over there and check us out, prayerboxministry.org. Also, Apple iTunes. We are on Apple iTunes. Go to podcast and Right Wing Reverend. All of our programs are over there. We appreciate the fact that you watch and listen, and we want you to be able to get all of the content that you want in an interactive way on our website. That's prayerboxministry.org. Well, that's a program, everyone. You have a blessed week. I look forward to next week when we can sit down and talk about this week in politics.